Hello, I'm Paul Briley, and you're listening to Off the Comma. I'm a human who cares about supporting other humans. On this podcast, we explore all facets of what it means to feel stuck in life. We talk with people just like us who found themselves sitting on a comma and not knowing where to go next. We'll unpack the experience with them, where they've been stuck, what it feels like, what they experienced, and what they learned. My goal is to inspire you by seeing yourself in others. I believe that when we feel more connected and seen, magic can happen. And remember, if you find yourself sitting on a comma in your life, you can also talk to me without a microphone. To explore coaching with me and getting off the comma in your own life, check out my information and book a call with me at offthecomma.com. And I'm also doing something different. I'm curating my own sponsor community, local businesses and professionals who I handpick and who align with our vision here. Be sure to check them out, learn more about them on my website and my YouTube channel. In the meantime, let's get into this week's conversation. Welcome back, everyone, to another exciting episode of Off the Comma, the podcast. And this week is going to be interesting because I have reconnected with an old, it's just old, right? A childhood friend. So this is one of my best friends from childhood, Eric Tomme. I'm going to let him introduce himself in a second here, but we reconnected. I'll spare you the long story, but we reconnected and then kind of started talking. And of course, me being the podcaster that I am, I'm like, I got to get you on the show. And so he's here. So now here's the thing. We haven't had a chance to really catch up on the last 35 years or whatever. So I get the one-sided pleasure today of hearing a little bit of your catch up, and then you'll have to get my catch up after we stop recording. So Eric, thank you.
I prefer mustard, by the way. Maybe mayonnaise.
I'm just telling you all, this is going to be an interesting episode because I know what I'm working with. Some people, people change and people don't change, right?
Yeah.
But
I've changed, but not changed. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do. And we were just, the folks listening don't know it, but we were just sitting here remarking, because we can see each other on Zoom, and remarking about how much we still the same. You can see where time has done its thing, but it's still that same person. So anyway, I'm going to shut up.
Right.
Eric, tell us, how would you like to be known, and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I think I'd like to be known as, I guess, really an objective, pragmatic, realistic person who tries to bring humor. That's just kind of my default. I try to bring humor to most situations. I'm the guy that's I've always been the class clown, right, in school and everything, even to a fault. And even as an adult, to a fault. But, I would like to be remembered as somebody who was realistic about things and tried to bridge the gap between, different people that are different. And I'm going to tell you right now, Paul, I've had a bad day. Like, I've struggled today with that notion of myself. And I've been doing very, very, very good lately, I think, or I feel like I have, at being just a friend. There are people that I know that I like as people, right? But oh my God, with the political stuff and just the nonstop, and there's a lot of that kind of dichotomy in me between friends and what they really believe and then what I really believe. But I always try to just bridge that and get over it, build a bridge and get over it. And even in religious circles, when I was in church, I'm not anymore. I haven't been in the church or been a believer or any of that stuff for 25 years. But even back then, that's when I was trying to, because I went to ministry school. Here's all this catch up stuff for you, or mustard, or You can't have barbecue sauce without ketchup. I'll just say that. So ketchup, good. So, but I went to ministry school because I thought that was the right thing. And through that whole process, I, made up my own, beliefs about that and thoughts about that. And, but while I was in that, my main goal was, this denomination over here believes this way. This one that I grew up believes this way. This one believes this way. What's the commonality? Like, why don't these people get together and actually, build bridges and do what's in the Bible, I guess, for, not all the rules and regulations and stuff, but what the heart of the matter is, and, serving people and being there for widows and poor and, things like that. And can't you guys come together and just get all that stupid, this differences in interpretation shit out of there and whatever. And so, even then in that setting, I was trying to be that kind of person. So, today was really hard for me though. And I was like, do you ever have conversations with a person out loud and they're not there, but it's kind of like you're, I don't know, not maybe practicing for if you did talk to them about a certain thing. Do you ever do that?
All the time. Okay. Yeah, I call it my made up scenarios.
Okay, good. Yeah. Then I'm not crazy. That's good. Or you and I both need to be committed.
Well, maybe there's a reason we're reconnecting. Can I step in and reflect something?
Yeah, sure.
So, as you talk a little bit about yourself, what I'm noticing is, obviously there's a lot of parts to you, right? As there are to all of us, right? And there's a lot of thoughts and there's a lot of kind of beliefs and approaches. But what I'm hearing you say is that there's this element of realism and pragmatism and this element of kind of seeing through fluff or seeing through stuff, for lack of a better word, to try to connect people, like to try to boil away stuff so that we can see the kind of the lowest common denominator or the clearest possible thread.
Yeah, boil away the divisive stuff, and it's like, what all is really there that brings us, together? What's our commonality that we can build on and actually get some, positive stuff going, versus just, always just arguing back and forth. And I'll tell you, that's what drives me the craziest about politics these days. Is it's just, to me, it seems like that's your team. That's, our team or whatever. And it's always just these two teams battling it out, and you just rah, 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 you suck, go Democrats, go Republicans, just whatever your team is. And you're just rooting for that versus actually, you're not playing the game at all. You're not getting in there and playing in it and being real involved. You're just over here being a fan.
Well, I believe you're pointing out the fact that the focus is on the adversity or the adversarial nature of it, right?
Yeah, and the fan type reaction from people, about, it. I just see that more these days as, you're in your camp, you got your blinders on. That's our team. It's like the Dallas Cowboy fan that can't be objective at all about, certain aspects of the team.
And no other world.
And it's just go Cowboys, go Cowboys.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's it. So, all that noise, trying to just boil that away, like you said, and getting down to commonalities and just being friends and being humans and interacting in that manner instead of just in our little camps. But I would like to be known for that, for being entertaining. I mean, I've always wanted to be entertaining. So, I had a little kid this weekend. We went and stayed with some friends up in their new family compound up in Pottsboro, Texas, which is pretty close to Sherman. If you don't know where Pottsboro is, and if you don't know where Sherman is, well, just Google map it.
It's Texas,
North Texas. But anyway, so their family's basically got like 4 acres of land. They built like 2 or 3 houses on it. They've got little cabins that they refurbished, really nice. I was just out there. We're putting up a pool and everything. And I'm just out there just being me or whatever. And she stopped and looked at me. And she was like, "You're funny." And I was like, "Oh, really?" And she was like, "Yeah, you're funny." And I was like, "Well, thanks, friend." And so, I think I'm just always trying to be the entertainer and the lighthearted one, and make everything not so serious, and just make it a more lighthearted type of atmosphere around me versus something real heavy. Not that I don't get heavy.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I hear that. It's like you use the sense of humor, the comedy as the bridge to kind of close the gap between people, and I also hear you appreciating the acknowledgement. Even the acknowledgement of a 10-year-old, in some cases, in many cases, the acknowledgement of a 10-year-old can be so powerful, right?
Hey, yeah, I mean, how often are you going to be? I'm 54. How often are you going to get a 10-year-old go, "Hey, you're pretty funny," because most of my stuff is just a Zoom,
Yeah. Eric, so we know a little bit about you, and can definitely, I definitely hear these themes that you're talking about, and I can see that they're going to unfold in your story. So before we get into the story here in a moment, you haven't shared with me what we're going to be talking about. It's something I don't ever do with my guests. We're going to get into the 5 questions in a minute, but I always like to start with a short question at the beginning, which is, as you think ahead to the conversation that we're going to have the next 30, 40 minutes or so, what's your intention for yourself
in our conversation?
Yeah,
man, I mean, pure intention here, Paul, is to reconnect with you. I mean, I can tell a story, and that's great. And I really admire your podcast and the drive behind it. The off the comma, that off the comma thing is off the chain. You know what I mean? Like, so it's a really great concept, and sharing that kind of story to try to get you off your ass and get proactive on something is a great service. It's not just it's not just an entertainment or just to have a podcast so you can listen to yourself talk for an hour. It actually has a service. So so it's great that maybe I could toss something in there. It's not going to be like the most inspirational thing ever, and everybody's going to finally get off their butts and do the thing. But my aim here is to reconnect with Paul Briley, and I've already told you, just hearing your voice and seeing your picture or your video is just brought back so many memories. It's like putting on I said putting on an old shoe earlier, but it's really like putting on a really nice, memory foam, fuzzy, bedazzled slipper. You know what I'm saying? It's more like that.
I'm going to take that as a compliment and the acknowledgement that it is intended.
It's comfy. It's fabulous. It's all those things. Yeah.
I was going to say, I might need to do a little kind of, introspection on that too, but I hear your intention, and I'm very grateful for that. And I think it's kind of cool that we're going to reconnect in this way. People are going to get to see what that's like, right? And my intention is to give you the space to do that very thing. And even though we're going to be focusing on you and your story today, I will jump in from time to time. And I will invite you to also, you said it may not be that big of an inspiration or what have you. That's the thing. We're all regular people telling regular stories here. The point isn't to be the expert or to be the person with the most sparkly, piece of advice or wisdom or what have you. It's to be able to for you to be able to tell your story. And you know what? As people listen to the podcast, it's going to connect with somebody's, and there's going to be someone who hears something in your story that connects with them, makes them feel a little bit less alone, and potentially inspires and empowers them. So you don't control that. They will control what they take from it. So you just be authentic, be yourself, tell your story, and trust that the story will go where it needs to go and reach who it needs to reach.
Yeah. You know what? You're right, Paul. Let's inspire some people right now. Let's go.
Okay, let's do it.
We're going to change some lives today, brother.
Let's do it. All right, Eric, since you're new to the podcast and the podcast format, I just ask the same 5 questions every single time, and I'll kind of ask the question and you'll start to tell your story and I'll jump in from time to time. And then I'll kind of keep track of the time for us. So
all right, where are the hot wings? I thought we were eating hot wings here too.
That's 2 strikeouts, right? You might have to help yourself to the hot wings.
All right.
I don't even eat meat anymore.
Oh, so really?
Add that to the things that have changed column.
You're brave.
Too funny. Yeah.
I was a vegetarian for 5 years.
Okay.
And a rack of ribs did me in. So
yeah.
Stay away from those ribs.
A whole conversation. Yeah, yes. I didn't quit meat because I can't eat meat or any dietary sensitivities. It was kind of let me see if I can do it. Like, we know the health benefits that come with it and so forth. But I also know too, it's like I could eat meat anytime I want, if I wanted to, and I could literally go to tonight and get chicken nuggets if I wanted to. And there's a stubborn part of me that says I don't want to break my streak. So
yeah, no, I get that for sure.
Yeah. Okay. First question, Eric, back to you.
Let's go.
Where have you found yourself sitting on a comma in your life?
Well, sitting on a comma, I'm a really great procrastinator. I love to procrastinate. I procrastinated last night, as a matter of fact. My youngest daughter is about to have my first grandson. I've got a granddaughter from my first daughter. This is my youngest daughter, and she is going to have a boy here in a couple of months. Yeah, a few months. So we've got a shower for her coming up Sunday. And I've got a lot of stuff to do. But last night, I was like, hey, I want to play around with this music track thing, that I'm messing with. So I'm really good at procrastinating, even in the face of looming deadlines for your own grandson, but when it comes to my projects, I'm real good at procrastination. And what I had started here, I'm going to give you a little bit of background about my hobby stuff, and it goes into the whole comedic Eric bent there. When I met my wife, and I was doing this before I met my wife, but I met my wife, Kristen, at a karaoke bar, and I would go to karaoke bars all the time. And, even years before I met her, and I would write parody songs. Okay. So I'm writing parody songs, and I get up there and people think they're going to hear Beast of Burden by the Rolling Stones. And they're going to hear Yeast of Burning about a yeast infection from me. My moniker was always Sea Monkey. So when you heard Sea Monkey get up here, the crowd knew something was about to happen. So I would do all these, what I would call wrong,
kind of irreverent, right?
Like I just gave you an example of a song about getting a yeast infection from a guy's perspective. It's really ridiculous. And I'd always do these slightly offensive, not like, outwardly, like I don't do racist things and, like hate against other, groups or anything like that. It's not like that at all. It's just the subject matter. Like, it might be a very popular song that you've heard before, and then you hear my lyrics and you go like, oh, that's my favorite reaction when I was doing that, is the crowd going, oh, but they're laughing too, so it was that kind of thing. And so I was doing that all the time as Sea Monkey. That was my bent. My wife, heard me singing, Love Shaft instead of Love Shack. Anyway, so, Kristen came over and said, hey, that was funny, and blah, blah, blah. And we started talking. Fast forward, we got engaged, and she got me some recording time with a guy up in Denton, just out of his home. And so I got all these karaoke tracks that everybody kind of knew from the karaoke bar, and I went and recorded those. Just made a homemade burn CD, and just me singing over karaoke tracks, big deal. But I got talked into sending it into Dr. Demento. I don't know if you remember the Dr. Demento show. Did we listen to the Dr. Demento show ever together? It kind of seems like
we may have, but for the benefit of the listeners, because some folks may be familiar with this, a lot of folks probably won't.
Right. This is he was an old DJ that got into obscure comedy, what he called demented recordings. And he's also the guy that discovered Weird Al Yankovic. Weird Al would send tapes into the show and he became real popular. That's where Weird Al actually became popular. So he's done a weekly show for decades. And I would listen to him on Sunday nights on the radio. And, I'm like, hey, I do funny. I write these stupid, funny songs. So I got talked into sending that in. Well, I got a number one song on the Dr. Demento show.
Oh, wow.
It was called Sheep. It was a parody of Creep by Radiohead. And I think you can imagine the farm life that I portrayed there about sheep. And so I got a number one song there. I was contacted by a website called the Funny Music Project, or the FUMP.com, F-U-M-P. Mm-hmm. And they were like, hey, we heard you on Dr. Demento. We're starting this website up, blah, 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 blah. You want to be on the website? And I was like, sure, why not? It sounds great. Hey, fame and fortune like Weird Al Yankovic, here I come. Let me tell you, that doesn't happen that way. But anyway, so I started contributing some songs to the FUMP and all that. And I'm going to truncate this because I will just keep, just spouting words one after the other. But as I was in that scene, and more Dr. Demento things, I've had, a number of songs on the Dr. Demento show played by him. He even was on one of my albums, which I'll talk about here. But so I was doing all that, and I was listening to the Beatles a lot. I was just in this phase, right? It was just kind of like, okay, now I'm a young adult and I'm actually getting the Beatles. It was very nostalgic for me as well, but I'm actually really listening to it now and enjoying the music. But the way my brain works, as I'm listening to these songs, I'm like, I can write this song to be about boobs. And then listen to another song. I can write this song to be about boobs. And I listen to another song. You know what? I can make this song to be about boobs. So I got this theme thing. And to fill in one little gap here, my wife's mother, my mother-in-law, Dee Dee, she's a breast cancer survivor. When I first met Kristen, she had just gotten a mastectomy. And funny story, one of the first times I was ever over at Kristen's parents' house meeting her parents, her mother was telling me, she's not shy about this at all. She's telling me about how she opted for a tattoo instead of a nipple reconstruction. And then she proceeded to lift up her shirt and show me. And I was just like, what? I was like, and with her dad sitting right there and everything, I was like, oh my God. Like, this lady really does not care. And one of the quotes that I've always taken from her is like, why should I care? Those things tried to kill me. So, it's like, okay, you know what? Who cares? Like, got all these stupid parody songs, about boobs one way or the other, and so the Boobles was born. All Beatles, all boobs. And the idea that I came up with is, okay, I'm going to make a collection of Beatles parody songs, all about boobs in some way, some theme, wardrobe malfunctions, just we love boobs. Yeah. My Baby Mama, which was Lady Madonna, just whatever I could come up with like that. And then we're going to make this album and we're going to sell it and donate everything to breast cancer research.
Wow.
So that was the whole thought is, okay, I'm already doing stupid parody songs. They're already right there on the line. And I will say a lot of my songs, when they're really kind of really on the line there, I like to have consequences for the protagonist in the song, just to kind of show you, like, this isn't, I'm not celebrating this, really. There's going to be some consequences.
Mm-hmm.
But so anyway, so I started the Boobles. That was about 2007, I guess. And so I took that idea, ran with it, started to record stuff with just some friends, really, in a studio. Then I went out and looked for actual Beatles tribute guys, told them the whole idea. They just loved playing the Beatles, and they did. I mean, they had all the gear, even the wigs. They're impersonators basically, but they had all the gear, all the licks, everything down. So we started recording, and I had all these songs, Paul. I mean, like I had written like over 25. Now it's more, but over 25 songs, and I had all these pieces. Like I recorded all the drums first with one guy, and then the other guys would come in, kind of overdub and stuff like that as they could come in. And trying to think when I put out that first album. I put out that first album in like 2011 or something. But I had all these other songs, and I didn't make a ton of like sales or anything, and it was just kind of like, it was okay. It did okay. It still was in our circles, well known. And I did throw some bashes, played a couple of live things with those guys, and we raised, thousands of dollars for breast cancer research. So that was all good. Mm-hmm. But other things in my life were going on that made me kind of just basically all that stuff that I had put together, it just basically put it on hold. There's my comma. Mm-hmm. So I commaed it out. And that was, I had, I've told you I have 2 daughters. My wife, Kristen, now isn't my first wife. She's not the mother of my kids. My first wife had a real hard time with in that divorce. Very, very, very difficult. And around that time, my kids, kind of told me, we want to stay with mom and live over there. I'd already felt like I'd gotten kind of scammed, I guess, out of my, I agreed they could go to school over there and that, and all that. And I was kind of losing touch with my kids. Mm-hmm. One of my kids, my oldest, developed an addiction. And so I was going through that too. And so I just had, and I mean, you think, okay, yeah, that is, of course, you're not going to be over there making comedy music about boobs when you got your kids, are kind of leaving your nest to go stay with mom. And I get it now. They're getting in their teens, and, teen girls need to be, and not to take anything away from Kristen, because she's a great stepmom and did a lot for them. But, they wanted to be near their mom, but it really, really hurt. And I kind of just lost myself there, I got really down on myself. And, I would do things in spurts. I'm like, okay, I've got to get with these guys and get this song done or something, and blah, blah, blah. And I do things in spurts, but I just didn't have the wherewithal, really, or the gumption to get up and finish anything. And that languished for years. Trying to think of when I actually did get around to doing the second album. I guess it was, shoot, I could probably tell you by my awards over there. Aha. So I do have 2 awards for it, if you can believe that. For excellence in comedy music.
Well, it doesn't surprise me. And if I may, let me jump in for just a moment.
Go for it.
I want to take a moment to kind of reflect what you've shared with us. So, because there's so much here that you've shared with us.
It sounds so dumb to you.
No, not at all. Not at all. In fact, I hope in these reflections that you might be able to acknowledge yourself for some of the things that I'm seeing and hearing that you're sharing with us. So, first of all, this kind of, this life of being a parodist. Is that a word? Can we make that up right now?
I think
being
it
a
is.
parodist. I know there's a better word for it, or another more descriptive word. But anyway, this life of parody, this life of being able to poke fun at serious things in life, not so serious things too, I'm sure. This ability to find a lighter side, help people or make people chuckle at things that don't often get chuckled at, was a thing that you had that kind of, as you said, in your earlier years, and as I recall, your earlier years would get you in trouble sometimes. And then yet it's part of you, right? Like this is not something you could just stop or pull away or whatever. It's kind of built into who you are, into your DNA. And yet you turn it into something through a series of circumstances. It presents itself as having this upside, this strength, right? And here you've now channeled that energy, that talent that you've developed through this parody and irreverence, or whatever the words we want to use. You've channeled it into a thing that supports this important cause that affects so many people, so many women and some men, right? 10% of cases are with men as well. But so many women who are affected by this, and you're able to honor and acknowledge their experience through this art of humor, and also raise money for the cause. And so there's this kind of cool evolution of who you are and how this energy is being channeled. And there's this other side too. It's like, while these things are happening, that is actually kind of an ascending arc in your life, there's also this other arc in your life that's like, wow, that's not so ascending. And it's really pulling the energy away from the ascending arc.
Yes. It sucked it right out. And I'll tell you another thing. Once I was finally kind of coming to grips there, we kind of came into the Me Too thing as well. And knowing my subject matter here, not everybody's thrilled about it. And not everybody, of course, you know how it is on social media. People don't, they don't come across a post and get to know the person that wrote it and know where it came from and what the real thoughts are and all that stuff.
Study the context, listen to the whole video, read the whole post.
Right. Things that I didn't think were that serious, it's like, well, shit, obviously. And let me give you the main one, because this is the one that bugged me and it still kind of does. And I've even talked to other friends in the comedy music business who have had quote unquote problematic songs because of, and I'm not going to say because of wokeism or anything, but because of the culture and the generational shifts into being a little more, hey, the world isn't all black and white, guys. There's all these shades of gray, and you need to acknowledge all those shades of gray, or let's put it better, all those colors in the rainbow, right? So the world's kind of evolved that way. And a lot of people don't get it. They immediately would go, you're a sexist or a misogynist or whatever. So the one song is We Love Boobs. And that's the lead off song on the first album. And it's, she loves you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so here, I'll give you some lyrics. The first verse is, you say that life's a joke. Yeah, you think that no one cares, but that's just blowing smoke because you're well endowed upstairs. And we love boobs. You can always count on that, And at the end, the last verse goes, you say that I'm a pig, you're offended to the core, but girl, your breasts are big and the rest of you's a bore. Okay. And so I thought that's funny, coming from my old Benny Hill bring up and everything. And of course, yeah, I'm being a pig, Yeah, it said it right there. You say I'm a pig and then you're offended to the core. Yeah. I know. Yeah. Cause I'm being piggish here, and it's supposed to come from that whole sea monkey thing. And then when you go, especially when you're going with the Beatles, all right, that's pretty big stuff. I've been approached at karaoke once by a guy after I finished singing one of these Beatles parodies, and I could see him stalking. I mean, like just back and forth, just walking back and forth, looking so agitated. When I finished, he came up to me while I'm on the stage, and he got up in my ear and he said, "You better not ever fuck with another Beatles song ever again." And I was like, "Or what?" And I stood back like, tase me, bro, or whatever. Like, come at me, bro. That's what. No, it's don't tase me. So, but I sat back like, yeah, what? Come at me. And the karaoke DJ and the bartender both sandwiched the guy and slammed him down and threw him out. And I was like, yeah, see there, But the point there was I just had to finish off the story in that. Because I could still see that in my mind. But the point there was this guy wasn't having it because it was a Beatles song. Like, that was sacred ground. You know what I mean? So when you put that out there, and then also, you're saying these kinds of things, and, people don't know the background or whatever, and they don't kind of see that you're kind of calling yourself out in your own song, things like that. I don't think it's funny. And I respect that. Like, you don't have to think it's funny. I get that. You can say, "Oh, that's the worst trash I've ever heard," and whatever. I get it. Don't listen to it. Just maybe go make a contribution. Don't buy my album. Go make a contribution to the BCRF or something. But I get it. And so that one's bothered me for a long time, because we're talking. And you can even see this in old like TV shows around that time, like The Office and things like that. There will be some real, like, some stuff that is perfectly acceptable then. But you hear it like now, and you kind of go like, I don't know if I say that now.
Things. What do they say in social media? Like the things that didn't age well, right?
Right, and they don't change with the way society has changed. And I'm very, very sensitive to the way society has changed these days. I personally think that woke is a good thing. I think it means, or what it's supposed to mean, is that your eyes are open. You're not sleeping on, listening to other people and, giving them respect and listening to their story and all that. Your eyes are open. Your ears are open. You're woke. You're listening. It's totally turned into something completely bastardized, but that whole shift, it just doesn't really, that humor didn't really age well. So when I had all these extra songs and I'm sitting on my comma, when I finally got to the point where, okay, I've wallowed in my grief, I've been depressed. I've had even suicidal moments, where I just was real dark and just couldn't believe I was there. It's unbelievable to think about now. But once I started to come out of that and come to grips with the reality, okay, remember, I like to try to just stop and say, okay, what's real here? What's the reality? That's what I'm dealing with. So how do you make the best of that reality? Once I got to that point and started getting back into, okay, I can start working on the Boobles again and get a second album out, which incidentally became a double album because I had that many songs about boobs, if you can believe it, in one way or another.
Well, it didn't shake your resolve.
Well, it did, but then when I was coming out of my personal grief to where I could actually get back to being me, and feel like, okay, now I feel like being funny again and trying to contribute to the funny music scene and get back on Dr. Demento and, that kind of stuff. Then, like I said, Me Too was really becoming a thing, and, social media, the whole kind of over woke, if you will, the way too woke. Like, you had 20 cups of coffee and now you're talking a little insane kind of woke. Like that was really becoming a thing. And I was seeing this happening to other comedy musicians and, their songs and, whatever. And so I was like, well, shit, I've worked years and years and remember, I would do things intermittently.
Mm-hmm.
I just wasn't like actually getting anything finished. I'm just doing these little intermittent things and then just kind of letting it languish.
Yeah, you said procrastination was really kind of the name of the comma, right?
Yeah, I'm really good. I'm really good at that. And so it's when you're, wallowing in grief, it's even easier to procrastinate. But so when I was getting up off of that comma in the project, there was kind of another one that presented itself, and that was the whole societal shift, the social media, where you can get canceled, right away. And I mean, I was like scared. I was like, I don't know if I want to do that, like I feel like I'm going to get, stir up some iron, whatever. And I mean, I'll be real with you. I really haven't, it really didn't ever come to that. I don't know if it's because of the breast cancer bent. I kind of think it is. I mean, it's like, if he's doing something good, at least he's trying to do something good with it. But this is like, what if the Beatles in an alternate universe that was, they only sang about boobs, like, that was the whole thing, alternate universe. This is it. We want it to sound like that. Of course, our voices didn't.
Well, I mean, an acknowledgement, right? Like even listening, but seriously, like one of the things I do as a coach is like, let's just pull back and kind of look at the objective elements of this, right? Because I'm sure there might be people who listen to this who are going to form opinions, judgments, et cetera, right? Like you're no stranger.
Oh yeah.
You're no stranger to that. And yet what I would acknowledge you for is you're unafraid to explore this area, right? This space when it comes to, comedy music, these parodies. Like there's one acknowledgement right there, like unafraid to explore those spaces. It appears to me that there's also a little bit of a drive there. There's a lot of creativity that comes up in that space, right? That you're able to do, regardless of somebody's opinion about it or somebody's judgment about it, you're still able to create and produce this. Look at how many tracks, look at these lyrics that you've described. And I also want to acknowledge you for the fact that you do pay attention to your environment. And I don't know, that's not for anybody else to say, it's for you to say whether it's good, bad, right, or wrong. But you've just described, like, I took time to go back and reflect. I took time to go back and explore the second album that hasn't been released. I took time to go back and relook at these things through a new lens. So, you haven't said, fuck everybody, I'm going to do it anyway. And even if that had been your choice, that's still a choice.
And in the end, I kind of had to, in a way, say, fuck it, just stop thinking of all of these defeating, thoughts. And, if you think that it's not going to be damaging and really hurt somebody and it's just funny and you can convey that, like this is total cartoon band, I mean, like our Sgt. Pepper's album cover for the second album. The second album's called Booby Road, by the way. But the Sgt. Pepper's album cover on that, our drum head says Schlub Band. Like instead of, Lonely Hearts Club Band, it says Schlub Band. So it's the Booble Schlub Band, And so, we know we're just, silly and stupid. So it's not like we're putting stuff out to be hateful or misogynistic or anything like that. It's purely just for parody reasons, Yeah.
Well, and sometimes, I mean, we know this too, like even in a coaching context, when you're working with somebody who's trying to, potentially solve a problem or unpack something that they're experiencing. Sometimes one of the pathways that you'll explore is it's not always just where do I want to go or where do I want to be? Sometimes it's like, this is really difficult. Well, let's go all the way into the difficult, right? Or let's explore the extreme of what would happen if you actually did go that other direction. Or so I'm kind of, as you're telling your story, I'm kind of like, I'm seeing in you the let's go all the way. Let's acknowledge it for what it is, and let's go all the way there, right? Like let's just lean all the way into it.
Well, not quite, because I mean, that was my next comma on the project, was the social climate, and how are these going to be received, and what is that going to make me look like? Is it going to make me look like I'm an actual misogynist? The Boobles did win 2 awards for outstanding parody song, and it's the Logan Whitehurst Memorial Awards for excellence in comedy music, called the Logans. They give her a nice robot cat statue.
Nice.
Really cool.
Nice.
But the 2 songs that I won for, these were ones that, as I'm looking at that climate, and I'm like, I really want to finish this project and put out all of these things that I've gotten all these great contributions from really great music. I'm talking like even, guys that are in popular bands now, like, I've gotten contributions from everywhere for this project. So I just felt like I was letting them down, but I didn't want to put out, like I said, in this climate and have this perception and all that stuff. So I did rewrite things and kind of start making some bents on, a few songs that weren't what the original, thought or hook was or whatever. But I did rewrite those things because I was very socially conscious, and, I already knew that I'd put out stuff before, and I still had some content that's, more just kind of, guys being guys talking about boobs, kind of thing. But I wanted to be more sensitive to, to the current social climate, and not just make songs about, Beavis and Butthead, boobies, make it more interesting and more have other sides presented, So yeah. I did get to do that, but it had me on that comma for a while after I'd gotten over that first comma of my own trauma that I was going through. Get up off of that comma, start going forward again. But then society had shifted, and then you got right on another comma. And so I had to reevaluate. But I am proud of the reevaluation that I did. I think it was the right thing to do.
Well, and it's a good setup for the second question. So, and I feel like
you've already, that's what I was hoping for.
I feel like you've already answered a lot of this question, but I'll give you a chance to add to it. So the question is, if you look back at either of those 2 commas, or maybe just the 2 of them together, what did this create for you?
Well, the first one with my kids and my ex-wife, I mean, I'm talking like it was years of strife with my ex-wife. Honestly, my situation was kind of, and I'll boil it down to this. It was one of, kids do something wrong. Hey, you need to punish the kids. Take away their phone, ground them, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Go to mom's house. Here's your phone back and you're not grounded. You know what I mean? A lot of that going on. And then I always felt I had to justify myself to my kids. And looking back on that was the wrong thing to do. Like, you don't just be a parent, don't try to justify your position at the expense of the other parent, which is kind of what I did. It was the wrong move. But going through all that and getting to a point where it was like, dude, if you don't get over this, you're just going to be just a miserable sack of shit, and you're not doing what you've been doing. You've got that project looming over your head like all the time. You're going to have to do something about it. And so what I chose to do, Paul, was I chose to forgive my ex-wife. I just let it go. And that was the best thing I've ever done. It was the most freeing thing, next to quitting smoking, I guess. But it was the most freeing thing, because if I just let it go and don't feel the need to always have to address that, it was just a huge weight off of me. So I could forgive my kids for, the hurt that that they caused me by, not wanting to stay with me anymore at that period of time. And, they've kind of come back, and everything's, cool, but I had to do that, and not hold any grudges and understand there are young teenage girls that need to be with their mom. Much as it hurt me, as much as I said, hey, you got a great support, you got a mom here too, I just had to get it, and me letting that go with their mom just freed up so much. And then I could actually get back to the business of being me. So what did it create for me? It created a freeing atmosphere where I realized that I don't have to just carry that around all the time. My life doesn't have to be that way. And, I'll tell you, like, I explained this to my wife. I was like, look, just let it go, because my ex-wife, my current wife, my only wife, my last wife, not just current, I'm done. But she hurt her too. And I mean, she was very, very mean, very, very mean to her. And she's held a grudge. I think she's finally kind of getting over it. Like, they're actually working together on my daughter's shower that's coming up. And I think she's kind of now finally getting into that, mode for herself. My wife's 11 years younger than me. So in more ways than one, she's always been more mature than me. But, some other things life's just got to go on, and you got to get those years behind you and, live that life to really be able to see it and understand it. But I was trying to tell her, man, just let it go. It's so freeing. I swear to God, it's a huge weight off. But she couldn't do it. She couldn't do it. But I think she's finally getting around to it. But that was the moment for me that gave me the most impact, I guess, looking back on the comma that I was getting on.
Well, let's actually bring that focus back to you for the third question, which is, what have you learned about yourself as a result of sitting on this or these commas?
I think what I've learned is, honestly, it's if you can do it, then you can do the next thing. So I said it's really easy to procrastinate and that stuff, but I don't let my ideas really just languish and slide if I really have something to do. I've done it before, and I've gotten up off of that, and it took me that whole project to getting out the second album was like 13 years or something. Like, that's a long freaking time. And just living those years, getting it behind you just kind of gives you the wherewithal, I guess, to look back and say, okay, I can make a decision, and it doesn't always have to be this way. Like, I don't always have to react that way and just sit on things and procrastinate and whatever. So even in my professional life now, sometimes I find myself, especially, just when work gets so mundane and so plodding, it's really hard to stay engaged. But you don't have to just feel that way, like, you can do something and change it a little bit.
So I'm hearing kind of learning from your past experience, like proving your capability, right? Like, defer to your evidence that I can do things and I can move in the direction of what I want, and taking action, right? And take a step.
Yeah. And just kind of just let it go and do it, One thing I'm doing right now is, I collect records, and, and there's certain bands that I collect, and, certain circles. And one group that I follow is Meat Beat Manifesto. They're an electronic, kind of industrial electronic, very now kind of avant-garde almost. But this group that I'm a part of, like kind of a fan group and stuff, I've met all these other people and interacted with them over the years. And there's a guy in there that they run an electronic music digital magazine and have for, a long time. And he asked me years back to, like he noticed that there's another group that I like called The Orb. And one of their landmark album, their first album, was having an anniversary. And he just messaged me and said, "Hey, would you be interested in writing a feature for this anniversary or whatever?" And I was like, "What, for your digital magazine?" Like, I'm not a music critic and writer and stuff, and it was just like, I don't know, man. And since I didn't do that, and this has been a number, several years ago, since I didn't do that, it's always been in the back of my mind. Why didn't I do that? I mean, why didn't I try it? Mm-hmm. And so, fast forward to now, well, Meat Beat Manifesto has released a couple of records on this label called Yellow Machines that's, on Bandcamp. And I was just like, what they've got all these other releases, electronic EDM, dance stuff, jungle stuff, all this different electronic stuff that this guy's made this label and, put out all these records. And I was like, I want to know this guy's story. Like, how'd you start a record label? And how'd you get to work with this band that I've followed for, 30 years or more? Almost 40, mm-hmm. I guess. Jeez, I'm getting old. So I just messaged the guy and said, "Hey, what would you think if I got in touch with the Yellow Machines guy and just asked him questions and did a kind of an expose on him or whatever?" And he was like, "Yeah, go for it." So I've gotten in touch with that guy and sent him all these questions, and I'm writing a thing for him. I've done some interviews. I started it right before the pandemic, and then, that put a pause in that, but it wasn't like the project like the Boobles or anything. It was just a mm-hmm. thing I just did, but it's like, why not? And, it's called a Sixer with Sea Monkey, where I get 6 different craft beers from wherever and interview somebody, and we share these 6 different beers, talk about what, do we like these beers or not and whatever, and I ask them questions. So basically I'm ripping off Hot Ones, which I mentioned earlier. Still want my chicken wings, Paul. but I was like, that sounds like fun. And so I've interviewed, bands, I've interviewed artists, comic book artists, and just gotten to know people just by saying, what I'm going to do is do this thing and interview them and put it on the internet just because, Mm-hmm. And so the fact that I did, I did the Boobles, and then I went through my crises and, had to, pick myself up and get off my ass and actually force myself, to get back in there and do it. That gave me the gumption to say, well, you know what? These other ideas that come in my head, why not just do them? I mean, like, life is too short to just kind of, for me, to just sit over here at my desk in my job, which I do land title insurance, a big gig. What a mark on the world I'm going to put with that, but it doesn't have to be just a mundane 9-to-5 existence. You can actually just do these crazy things. And when I saw that you had this podcast, it's a kindred spirit kind of thing. Cause I was like, wow, Paul's doing a podcast. Paul's a life coach, like he got off his ass and he's doing it, And so when the subject off the comma, was the whole crux of the show, then, it really resonated, because I'm like, yeah, he got up off his comma, got up off his ass and said, why not? I'm going to make my podcast. And so here we are. And now we're reconnecting.
Well, and I hear in you too, that like, that's what changed for you is you went through these commas, and you also had this other experience where you're like, oh, you kind of turned it down. Then you were kind of left wondering why. And yet you found another opportunity. You've created this new kind of avenue to be able to get out there and try and do some new things.
Yeah, this time he didn't ask me. I asked him.
Yeah. So what was resistance before has now become taking the initiative.
And what was doubt? Because the biggest thing was for me when he came to me that first time was just full doubt. Like, man, I'm not going to write something on this great landmark album coming out of this head for a digital magazine that's about electronic music. I'm going to sound so stupid, so uneducated. I'm going to sound like a total fanboy. I don't know what I'm talking about, because all these other, guys and writers seem to like, I knew that they made this on a, this type of Roland or Yamaha or what, they might know all the gear and stuff and technical terms. But I've always regretted that because,
right.
I've thought about it since. I'm like, you know what? I could have written something. I could have. No, I could have. But I was just so full of self-doubt that, But then, like I said, we got through the Boobles' second album and I rewrote things and I tried to make a better balance. So it's not, all kind of one-sided coming off this way. It's like, look, I'm parodying the whole world of boobs, like everything that I can think of.
Yeah.
And not just being misogynistic about it and stuff. So I can do that, I can be more creative. I don't have, like you're not just, I had to tell myself, you're not just base level, like, schoolyard comedy. And that's all you can ever aspire to talent wise, like you can do something that's going to come across as as not a uneducated or sophomoric, little boy view or something. I don't know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, but no, it's all good. It's all good. And you've shared so much with us. But let's kind of land the plane. So the very last question, short answer, Eric, what does getting off the comma look like for you?
Well, it looks like for me, like a really, really long answer. No, getting off the comma for me really looks like taking a step back out of your own head and out of your own, I don't know, like out of your own baggage and self-doubt and, just all those little nagging things that say, nah, this will never work, or nah, you can't do that. It's just saying, you know what? Try it. Just try it. You might like it. You might surprise yourself. You might even get a couple of, awards that you can't believe you got, So, that's it. That's it for me really is taking a step back, not wallowing in all the bad stuff that you got going. Look at your reality, say, this is my reality. So how do I live in that and still be what I want to be, and not just, fade off in the ether. And one thing that I was going to share with you, I did pull up some lyrics. It's by a group called Metric. And this really resonated with me. The song lyrics go, holding out for the right time. What if the right time never arrives? Always waiting on the sidelines. When is it my time to be the one? And one that really hit me was holding out for the right time. That second lifetime never arrives. Always waiting for perfection where affection cannot be won. So I'm always just waiting. If you're holding out, that you're not going to get a second lifetime. You're not going to get it perfect, So when is it going to be your time? Well, it's right now. And when I heard that song, it hit me and I was like, you can't just sit around and wait on a second lifetime and, oh, maybe next year, I'll feel like that. No, maybe next year you're not around anymore,
Mm-hmm.
So don't hold out for that second lifetime and quit waiting on the sidelines and just do your thing.
Okay. Wow. Eric, good stuff. So Eric, let's close this out. So if people wanted to find you, contact you, reach out, ask some questions, or even just look up your music, I'm going to put all the links in the show notes. So just tell us, where can folks find you, and they can go to the show notes for the links.
Well, the project is at theboobles.org. That's THEBOOBLES.org. And you'll see all about that. You can listen to some songs if you want to. Judge for yourself. But, that's pretty much it. The only other thing I'd point out is, if that's not your cup of tea, I get it. But I do ask, if it's not your cup of tea and you don't want to contribute that way, because the way I do it is basically I sell these records and whatever else, and then I just turn around and donate it, so like I've already made the expenditure. You're going to get a record, and what you've given me, like $40 or whatever, is going to just go straight to the Breast Cancer Research Foundation. But if you don't want the record, and you don't want to buy any MP3s or anything like that, then just donate to the Breast Cancer Research Foundation. That's bcrf.org.
Right. And that actually takes care of the second part, which was the acknowledgments. And so tell us a little bit more about what made you choose. I mean, you already talked about it in the podcast. Is there anything else you would add to why that specific organization?
Well, that specific organization, like I mentioned, my mother-in-law is a breast cancer survivor, and God, it's got to be over 20 years now. But, she always went to the Komen walks and things like that. But when I did my research on what organization puts the most funding into actual scientific research, it was the Breast Cancer Research Foundation. So that's why I've gone with them. That's why I promote them. Okay. You got to put on the balls, and they still do that stuff too. Don't get me wrong, and the walks, and you got to put on all that stuff and, spend money there too. But man, I'm just really more about, hey, finding a cure. So
Eric, thank you for coming on, sharing your story with my listeners, catching me up a little bit on, what you've been up to these last couple of decades. You and I are going to catch up some more once we turn off the microphone. And again, just thank you for being part of this community of storytellers and sharing with us your experiences of being on a comma and getting off the comma.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
All right, Eric, thank you again.
Thank you, Paul.
What an honor it is for me to witness these powerful stories. I hope you feel the same way too. Think about what you learned from this conversation. What stood out for you? What challenged you? What inspired you? And I encourage you to write it down in some form of journaling and reflection. Surprises can reveal themselves to you when you do this. And if you were moved by today's conversation, pass it along to someone you care about. Let's spread the word. Let's continue to build connection. And if you do discover something you'd like to unpack further, book a call with me and let's talk about it. My links are in the show notes. Be sure to like this episode, follow the podcast here on this platform and social media at Off the Comma, and feel free to comment and interact with these posts and episodes. Check out my website for workshops, events, and my sponsor community. I'm covering the costs of production by curating my own sponsors who align with our vision. Be sure to check them out. They're all powerful people and businesses. Thank you for listening to this episode of Off the Comma. As always, keep noticing and keep listening.